And I think, could you largely, one of the serious concerns about the conduct of parliamentary business is the high attrition rate.
Yeah.
Especially with experienced legislators and lawmakers over the years. And I dread to see how the new parliament is going to pan out, because we lost most of these experienced MPs in the primaries. Most of them lost their primaries. And then we have seen what's also happening in the main elections. Arguably, most of these people who lost in the main elections were those that were protected to some extent by their political parties from going for the primaries. So maybe the people still followed them to the main elections and vent their anger and took their revenge by voting them out. So it may at least affect some of the way Parliament will conduct their business. You know, civil society organizations have established links and built, rapport with committee heads and committee leaders, ranking members, and all those. Most of these things are going to change because new Parliament will require new leadership, because most of these people have gone. And that will also mean rebuilding another trust with the leadership and then the ranking members to be able to do your parliamentary job. But it will also affect, to some extent, at the beginning, the quality of doing business, still trying to understand and study the parliamentary procedure and the standing orders, which usually take a little bit of time to be able to come out with. But I don't think all of them are just that new. The majority of them have also been very successful in their businesses, and they will bring a lot of contribution to bear. You are looking at finest legislators like Haji Alima Mahama, Mutawakil Adam, Yao Babina Samoa, and a whole lot of them. You know, we're going to miss them. But you also have people like John Peter Meu, who is coming to the parliament for the first time, but with a lot of experience. You are looking at John Kuma, you are looking at Francis Xavier Soso, you are looking at Tampuli, you are looking at Adam Aminat. All those people have a lot of experiences in their force of endeavor, and bringing that experience to bear in parliament is also going to actually enhance parliamentary business. And we also have the comeback case like Cletus Avoka, Bidi Zidin, and all those people. They have already had those kind of experiences, so they just have to bring it back. So my major issue and the most comforting is the fact that even though we have lost so much experienced politicians, let's say most of the people coming in, most of the new entrants are not entirely new, but only maybe to the parliamentary processes and the understanding orders of parliament. But they have achieved a lot in their various areas of endeavor.
It's amusing to hear you call some of them comeback kids. Bidzidum, Cletus Avuka, I would call them comeback veterans. But comeback they certainly have. You know, it's shocking that the Business and Financial Times reports the same thing under the headline, Big Names Fall. They actually catalogue the fact that 53 seats have switched hands in the 2020 election so far. And 53, look, as for the deputy ministers, I mean, look, Works and Housing, that's Barbara Asha Eisi, she's gone. Roads, Transport, Fisheries has lost the minister and the deputy, you know, both lost. Health. Where has a deputy minister not been called?
It's actually a tsunami of deputy ministers.
It's crazy. It's crazy. Regional ministers have dropped, Tangoba, as well as I think in the Bono.
Hajia Alima Mahama.
Man. Something has happened. And you know, it's too many to be a coincidence. There must be some underlying factor. It's too difficult to imagine that this is just by chance. But I'm curious. Who is your biggest surprise, Clara?
My biggest surprise, I must say, is Pemka. My biggest surprise
Deputy
is Pemka.
Minister for Justice and Attorney General.
Yes, that's my biggest surprise.
Timpani. Is it Timpani?
Yes, Timpani.
Yeah.
My biggest surprise. Pemka and Okoboy. Those two are my biggest. Bobbing to a large extent, although Adenta is known for giving one term, but still I was surprised that Bobbing lost Adenta. Yes.
So some of our studies before the elections suggest there was a little bit, in some of these constituencies, there was a little bit of tension between the PCs and then either constituency executives or the PC, and then maybe the district chief executive within the constituency. There were instances where some district chief executives were ending their term. Maybe they were doing 2 terms and they believe that they will not be able to go again. So most of them, or some of them, have interest in contesting the seat. So it was reported or alleged that they were doing things that will make the MP lose, so that it will give them the opportunity to contest. So most of our going around, some of the works that we did suggested that there was a little bit of tension. Sometimes the PC, especially where the incumbent had lost, so there could be a tension between the PC who had won and the incumbent who was going, or the PC who had won and the district chief executive, or the PC who had won and then constituency executive, or the DC who had won and then constituency council of elders. And there may be instances where the PC only will have one of these stakeholders on his or her side, and all the rest are against him.
Wow.
So in a first past the post system where just 1 or 2 votes can make the difference, you need the support of all these group of people to be able to present a united front and to be able to lead. But beyond this, before this particular election, the political science department did a survey which suggested that most of the constituents were not happy with the way their MPs were performing. Especially some of them were not visiting regularly to their constituencies, and the perception was also that MPs are supposed to bring developmental projects, they are supposed to build roads, they are supposed to build hospitals and all those things. Especially MPs who were in opposition and couldn't lobby so much to get these things done, people got fed up with them. So there've been a lot of that element of sophistication in the way we vote, looking at the developmental projects you've been able to bring to the constituency, and how representative that you are to the interests of the people in parliament played a part. But largely too, it has to do with a little bit of deep cracks within the rank and file of specific political parties in specific constituencies, which actually played against these MPs who have lost.
So Clara's big shock was PEMCA. What was yours?
I don't know.
There's so many names to choose from when it comes to the oh my God factor. George Anda was a big shock to me.
Okay.
I know that there are many who can't quite understand how Dr. Okuboy ended up losing.
But honestly speaking, I think I'll go a little bit, though I knew there was a little bit of challenge at the Tempani constituency, but we went there and we realized that the MP was a regular visitor. You know, he used to, though a deputy minister of Attorney General, I learned he always visited the constituency. And there was even a unanimous decision by people who were even going to contest him that they should let him go unopposed. So they were primaries, yes, because people had confidence in the way he was managing the constituency. So it is shocking that at the end of the day, this actually happens to him. He's a fine gentleman, but that's what politics is all about.
Exactly.
You know?
And declaration of interest. PEMCA is my mate from law school. Yes, PEMCA is my mate from law school, and he apart from that, he's always had very good personal relations. And like you said, I know he kept in touch with his constituents and all of that. So I didn't see that coming. I didn't see that coming.
Lots of people are surprised. I'll tell you who surprised me. And in fact, this is not an NPP MP who has lost. It's an NDC MP.
Okay.
Felix Kwachiofosu.
Yeah.
But he wasn't an MP already.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah, he was going for the first
Wait,
time.
he was going for the first time.
Yeah.
I thought he was the MP because he spent so much time in that constituency.
No, he was going for the
spent so
first
much time there. You see how, I mean, I'm sure I'm not the only one who would have made that mistake because he's always there. So I actually was expecting to hear his name as the winner. When I heard that he hadn't made it, I thought, what?
Yeah.
You know? But look, for me, the big shock, the big turnaround, George Anda.
Yeah.
Not because I thought it's impossible to defeat George Anda, but because I didn't know anything about what Gisela Tete was up to.
Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't know anything. I think that the entirety of the national media had their eyes off her work, you know, to win that seat. And now that it's come to fruition, everybody's like, pardon, you know. But let's not forget, Hannah Tete was a stalwart in that constituency for many, many elections until George Anda came and sort of caused an upset in the last election. Hannah Tete is very well known. And so it makes you wonder whether perhaps some of that worked to the advantage of her sister, Gisela. But I'm shell shocked.
Okay.
I thought it was in the bag for George Anda, as an incumbent with access to resources and a lot of time spent in the community. You remember he had an accident a year or two ago in the constituency, and it was all because of how much frequenting of the constituency he was committed to.
Okay.
But here we
But
are.
Kojo, I'm also really okay. Sorry. Please.
No, it just shows that the Ghanaian voters are getting sophisticated, which is good. Which is good because, of course, every parliamentarian always wants to know what their constituents want so that they can do more of that. And then, of course, the perception around visiting is one of the things that people believe that helps you to maintain your rules. But it also shows that probably there's a bit more. It's probably more nuanced than we've looked at of giving them credit for. So it's good in the sense that it requires politicians or people aspiring to be MPs to do a bit more for the constituency. So, yeah.
I'm also really impressed by the quality of people who came out to contest. In some constituencies, it was very difficult. Left with the scientific evidence and polls and predictions, it will be very difficult to choose between maybe either the NDC or the MPP or the other candidate, because all of them were people who could do very good work. So when it happens like that, you now move beyond just the personalities and assess the policies. And I think a lot of great people came out and they gave a lot of incumbent MPs good one for their money. You look at Ayawaso West Wagon, it was one of the highly competitive what's the name constituencies. You go to Damongo, where we have one of the deputy chief of staff, General Paul, contesting Mutawakilu, and several other places. You go to Hohoi, you go to Gushigu, you go to Kalga. It was actually well contested with people of credibility, people of maybe who have achieved a lot, yes, in their own areas of work. So when we begin to have this kind of people contesting, then MPs know that I'm not just the only one. Sorry, being an MP is a privileged thing. That doesn't mean that you are more qualified than other people. Indeed. But where we have contestants or competitors maybe playing below, how am I going to say, I don't want to say less than that, not so much qualified compared to the incumbent. Sometimes it's just kind of an obvious choice. I'll do this. And what you have seen is that if you look at most of the pattern of voting, we've recorded a lot of split ticket voting, skirt and blouse, because people believe that, fine, I like this, but I think the MP of the other political party can do better.
I would love
so
for
that
us to
kind
talk
of
a bit
ticket
more
splitting occurred a lot.
The skirt and blouse outcome that we are
voting.
starting to see. But just before we go for that, Anthony Cabo also lost. Titus Glover lost. And with Anthony Cabo, again, I wonder whether others are as surprised as I am. Because again, his win in 2016 was convincing. It was convincing. What a difference 4 years makes.
That's true.
That, the opinions of the people in his constituency would have swung in such a clear opposite direction after 4 years. It beggars belief. So, anyway, skirt and blouse. Shall we talk about that a little bit?
Okay, yes.
It's starting to look like a conscious decision that the electorate has made, isn't it? Even though we don't yet know whether the majority in Parliament has changed, and that is something we cannot know until we have all constituencies in the bag. But in spite of that, it is quite clear that a pattern is emerging. Voters have decided that they don't necessarily want the same party representing them nationally and in Parliament. I mean, at the executive and in Parliament.
When it comes to that, I don't believe that voters have made a conscious decision that, okay, let's have a different party for Parliament and let's have a different party for nationally. What I think accounts for the skirt and blouse voting is unique to each constituency, because we all have one constituency that we vote in. And in that constituency, of course, the electorate would decide whether the candidate, the party, probably their preferred party is putting up, is the candidate they want to represent them. So if they decide, I think that one is judgment on the candidate. So if it's a particular parliamentary candidate, I think this is the time that the electorate is going to say that, okay, we are not going to let party delegates dictate for us. So if the party delegates bring to us a candidate that we would otherwise not want to represent them, even if that candidate is standing on the ticket of the political party we prefer nationally, we will still not vote for that political candidate. And it's one of the good things in the sense that I think now there's judgment now woman to woman and man to man, in the sense that it's not just about the party on whose ticket you're voting. It's also about you and whether the people think you represent them well enough or not, which is a good thing, because then party delegates, there's some kind of check on the power of party delegates. So if party delegates pop a surprise on us that they know we would otherwise not want, yes, you would have succeeded in getting to the ticket because you won your party primaries. It's not guaranteed, even if that is your party stronghold. There is still no guarantee that you would still get the backing of the people. So
I guess the point I'm taking away from what you're saying is that the big learning, or learning number one in a list of many learnings, is that delegates are not as representative of a party's preferences as we thought.
Absolutely.
That's number one. But number two, does it not also mean that people are not necessarily seeing parliamentary representation as something that must strictly be partisan?
Yeah, Kojo, I think,
Wu, for example.
Yeah, that was the case I was going to make. So I think normally we always think ticket splitting is done largely by undecided or swing voters. So we believe that these are independent voters, and the independent voters can swing that kind of seat either to the NDC or to the NPP or any other political party. But the trend that is now emerging is that even the swing voters are no longer just independents, but even party members can defect their vote to their own parliamentary candidate and give it to another person. So you look at Hohoi, for example. The presidential, I believe NDC won. Right?
Yes, presidential NDC won.
Yes, so it's suggested that
by 70-80%.
So it suggested that a lot of NDC voters defected in voting for their POF and then voted for Amewu. So we even have swing voters within political parties. You go to Mfansema, you know, the guy, the MP, is it Formina? Sorry, yeah, Formina. Sorry,
Formina.
The independent candidate who used to be the MP, the president and all the powerful people in the MPP went to that constituency and said, vote for the MPP candidate. But look at what happened. So gradually, the basic voter behavior of the Ghanaian has always been traditionally party dominance. So people vote because of the party model. But you are now beginning to see that even within registered party card-bearing members of political parties, they can still defect and switch the seat to a specific candidate other than their own political party. What does this explain? It shows that over the years, the people want to have so much control in participating and deciding who should lead them, rather than this being hijacked by the parties, the political parties that they are members of. But also, too, they want to show that you can no longer just ride on the political party thing and take us for a ride. Our interest as people is also very paramount. And the last bit has to show that, suggests that nobody is immune. So once you are given the privileged position to serve, do it to your best of ability, and the people will bear witness to what you have done. If you don't do it the way they want you to do it, then they'll give you what we call a protest vote. And these protest votes are manifesting strongly this year.
I wonder whether this will affect how Parliament operates and functions generally. Because I think the operation of Parliament is also on that premise, that everybody in the chamber is there to represent their party first and not their constituents. For that reason, even how we vote is determined in that manner. So instead of a certain amount of transparency in the voting process so that we know who is voting on what lines, in other parts of the world, in other democracies, in fact, you can point to an MP's voting record. You know, here, the ayes have it. Okay, and they do this simply because they actually believe that the MPs are there to represent their party's position.
If you're moving beyond that, you see, our parliamentary system have what we call the party whip system.
That's right.
And the function of the whip is to make sure the interest of the party is served in parliament. It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
And political parties can even take punitive measures against members of parliament who have voted in a way that doesn't represent the party interest. And we have seen a lot of MPs who have spoken against their political parties, campaigned against their political parties, and what happened to them at the end of the day? So the party can decide to deselect you so that in the next election you do not contest. By filing a more competent candidate against you, they can even disqualify you in the process, whether it is based on transparent or otherwise. They have some. Look at what happened to yeah, and then there was another NDC MP. Was it Tei? Is it Tei? No. Yes. Yeah, and people like that. So what happens is that the party believe that as long as you use the name of the party to come to parliament, then you must do the business of the political party. But unfortunately, too, the way our parliament is designed, it hardly make rooms for independent candidates. So even when you win on if you contest as an independent candidate and you get to parliament, you either have to sit with the majority or to sit with the minority. So those kind of things even make the so-called independents, who were supposed to be very cautious and very vigilant in the kind of partisan positions and bills, consideration of bills, are also lumped into either the majority or the minority. So moving forward, there should be an opportunity for people to sit as independent and to express independent views, rather than being lumped into either the majority or the minority, so that it creates the opportunity for us to see that element of a third opinion emerging in parliamentary business, rather than just being whipped in line if you have a different opinion. It affects MPs' ability to take independent decisions and to act as rational, independent thinking people.
Okay, when it comes to the independent candidates sitting with either minority or majority, I don't think it necessarily affects their independence. You will sit with the majority, but you do not necessarily have to agree with everything that the majority says. Or you choose to sit with the minority, but you do not necessarily have to agree with everything that the minority says. And unlike the party whips, they can't really whip you in line because you are not beholden to any of them. We can remember Hawa Yakubu. We can remember when Hawa Yakubu was the lone voice in parliament and all of that. She exercised her independence and all of that. So when it comes to independent candidates, I think it is up to them how they want to exercise their mandate. But the
tendency to be co-opted.
This year's one confirmed independent so far announced even before the election that he was doing it for the NPP.
Yes.
So he has kind of given up the opportunity to be independent.
So that becomes his decision rather than the system compelling him to take that decision. It's solely his decision. Even for the MPs, yes, we know that structurally the MPs, as Parliament, is supposed to hold the executive accountable and all of that. But even apart from the party whip, let's face it, after 4 years, you may want re-election, right? If you want re-election, how do you get to be on your party's ballot paper? It's going to be the delegates, the party delegates. Now, if you have not been towing the party line, whether or not you will find favor with the party delegates or not is another thing. So there's that issue. And to some extent, yes, if you are contesting on the ticket of a political party, there is reasonability to expect that you would uphold the interests of the political party and all of that. So that in itself is not necessarily. It is just as a people what we've come to, because even the political party and everybody should realize that the bigger interest should be the national interest, and that I should have some principles and some values and expect my party to go along with those values, so that when my party does not go along with those values, I'll have the courage to call out my party in a bid to help my party to get along with the values that work. Whether or not, if after doing that, if you want the delegates again, But then it comes back to where we have to go back to the delegate system and see whether we need to expand it. Because if I don't have to fear a few delegates, and I know that largely my constituents support this take that I've made, and at the end of the day, I go back to my constituents so that even a situation where my constituents can point to this, that this is what the stance you took on this issue, and we like it, and we don't like it, for which reason we want to retain you or not, is another issue. So part of deepening our democracy will be also being interested in the internal party democracy, the internal structures within the various political parties, to ensure that broadly they are able to put up candidates that largely the constituents respect. And then, of course, still the political party candidates have the extra leg, because in your case, you have to get out of the party, you have to scale the party structure first to get the nomination. After that, you have the bigger task of convincing your constituents that you deserve to be retained. And then, of course, then the constituents are going to be interested in what happens. But it then brings back the question, I believe, I'm trying to remember, one of the MPs also talked about it. Even if you're a very good parliamentarian, so you've been returned to Parliament, you've scrutinized the bills very well, you've made great points on the floor of Parliament, you've influenced policy very well, but you haven't done the constituency bit. Are your constituents going? You would have been a great parliamentarian, you've helped the national cause, but are your constituents necessarily going to be impressed that you did a great job for the Ghana Parliament? These are some of the things we need to start looking at, and also see how we can broaden the education across the base, so that largely we move more towards a more accountable parliament that seeks to hold the executive accountable in line with the objectives that we had for the structure that we put in place.
If you're listening to us on radio, that is the voice of Clara Berry Kasati. She, of course, is a legal practitioner and a law lecturer here in Ghana. She's one of our two panelists helping us do the analysis this morning on your election headquarters. She's here with Dr. Seydou Alidu, who is a political scientist, lecturer as well at the University of Ghana, Lagos. Now, let me tell you where we are. Since this is your election headquarters, here are the numbers. So far, here we have been able to confirm the results from 258 constituencies. That's 258 out of a total of 275. Now, from what we have confirmed so far, from the numbers we've confirmed so far, 258, we place President Akufo-Addo ahead of former President John Mahama. We place President Akufo-Addo with 51.32% of the votes we have confirmed so far, and former President Mahama with 47.28% of the votes that we have confirmed so far. So 51.32% for President Akufo-Addo, that is some 6,245,281 votes from the 258 constituencies that we have so far. And for former President Mahama, the 47.28% is made up of some 5,753,514 votes. We believe the other candidates together make up about 1.4% of the vote. That's 169,815 votes. And of course, we're going to keep updating that figure as we go ahead. But we have declared here on your election headquarters that former President Mahama now has a more difficult path to 50% plus one than President Akufo-Addo does. And we will continue to keep an eye on those figures as they unfold. But at the moment, we now have to pay attention even more, in some people's view, to what's happening in Parliament than the outcome of the presidential election. Because we may, for the very first time, we may be heading towards a situation where the majority in Parliament is held by a party other than the one that holds the executive. Now, because it is a very real possibility, we have to discuss it in very real terms. It won't be the first time such a thing has happened in Ghana. We know what happened to President Liman's
79.
administration when his budget didn't get approved because there was a different party controlling parliament. So he ended up basically doing nothing because, well, yeah, you can't approve your budget, nothing happens. We know Ghana and we know politics in Ghana, how divided they are and how people basically, as we've been saying, vote on partisan lines in parliament. Now, I want to talk about the factors that would affect governance in Ghana if the majority in parliament was different from the executive, the party in executive government. I want us to talk about the factors. Whether we will end up with the same black and white situation we had with Liman, or whether we now have a situation where perhaps there are some sophistications to be introduced. Will things be the same? Or will we, for the first time, have a parliament that genuinely checks the executive?
Okay, so if you look at the practicality of it, it's really going to be, especially where we're going to go very partisan, it is going to be an unpleasant situation. But on the side of democracy, it is also very good. So maybe I'll speak to the good part first before I look at the challenges. Now, if the party that controls parliament will usually have the privilege to elect the Speaker of Parliament, and then the first Deputy Speaker of Parliament, chairs and ranking members of various committees. And you know that majority of the issues that come to Parliament, most of the work are done at the committee level. But also, where if you are not careful where you have a Speaker of Parliament that want to be very partisan, it affects the quality of deliberations in the House. So it means that when we have one particular party controlling the legislature and another controlling government, our democracy will depend in the sense that there will be a lot of, what do you call it, what am I going to say? There'll be a lot of consultation, definitely. Because over the years, one of the most serious functions of every legislature and democracy is to exercise an oversight over the executive. And we have seen that over the years, this has not always been done properly because the members of parliament always warm up to the executive for appointments, ministerial, deputy, and all those things. So over the years, and to be able to get that privilege, you need to do the bidding of the executive. It affects the way bills are scrutinized. It affects the way the quality of debate in the House. Sometimes even, and the certificate of emergency, dubious deals that are supposed to benefit from public scrutiny of the MPs are always pushed through the back door. So what we have seen over the years is majoritarian parliaments rather than a consensus building-oriented parliament. So having a situation of this kind can push towards consensus building. So the executive will definitely have to consult more with the leadership of the House, and that's going to be the other political party. And deliberate consultation can lead to what? Consensus building. And where there is consensus building, I also believe a lot of scrutiny, a lot of vigilance, a lot of oversight, and all those things will be exercised. And that is all going to make our democracy work perfectly. On the flip side, where the party that controls parliament want to contest the next elections, then they will do everything possible in their partisan way to make the government look bad. Even in cases where one party controls legislature and executive, the opposition will still do things that will make the government look bad, moving up to the next election. So if it has to do with one party controlling the executive and another party controlling the legislature, the legislature controls the purse of government of the day. And I remember when I was a government student in secondary school, my government teacher used to tell me that the British Parliament can do everything except turn a man into a woman, and the vice versa. Simple because they control the purse.
Yes.
And once they do not give you the budget that you want or refuse to approve budget, you cannot run government. And that was what happened under President Hilary Liman. So people believe that the President Hilary Liman government was nearly collapsed before the 1979 overthrow tool came in. And that is why, in the wisdom of the famous of the 1992 Constitution, they now say that majority of our ministers must come from what? Parliament, so that there could be that element of collaboration. But in totality, all this hinges on two important concepts of government: separation of powers, and then what? Checks and balances. To what extent can the executive and the judiciary and the legislature support each other? And to what extent do they have to work separately from each other? So when we begin to, the practicality is that when the opposition party that controls parliament want to be very mischievous and political, they will hold government to ransom. But where they really want to serve national interests, there will be more consultation, there will be more consensus, and democracy and the people will be served.
I have a question that follows this, but I've realized that before we can do justice to that question, we have to settle a certain legal matter. So I'm coming to you for that, Clara. And if the answer, because I've never seen the answer written anywhere in black and white. So if it turns out that it's not written anywhere in black and white, maybe we can rely on whatever jurisprudence there is, in Ghana to try and figure out what the answer is. Here's the question. I've just won a seat in Parliament. I'm an MP. As I walk into that chamber, what is the legal requirement of me? Is it to represent my constituents or my party? I mean both, clearly, but which one legally is my superior obligation?
No, for the black and white letter law, of course, the Constitution provides for the qualifications of an MP and your role as an MP. Now, in terms of your political party and yourself dynamic, the only requirement is that the black and white letter law provides is in terms of whether you denounce your party or not, so that if you get up and say that, hey, I no longer want to be a member of my party, I have resigned from my party, or for some reason you are no longer a member of your party, then you cannot represent your party in Parliament. But as to how you do your job in Parliament, the law does not say that always support your party. That's not what the law says. The law has its requirements of you as to how to go about your parliamentary business and what your role is, and that one is party blind. The one that is not party blind is, like I said, you cannot get up and say that I no longer want to be a member of my party and still be able to represent your party in Parliament. Largely to a very large extent, as to how you now, we always have the soft law and then the hard law. That one is more up to you and the values that you stand for and the reasons for which you believe you were voted into Parliament to do. So that one, of course, it then becomes up to each individual MP how they want to do their work. But I always say that it's understandable to a very large extent why political parties are interested in keeping their MPs in line. But it is always up to the individual MP to decide how do I want to represent my people and whether this is how to represent my people. And one, take it up with your party if you need to. And also make sure you do your work well in Parliament. When it comes to having, let's say, the majority in Parliament not being the party that wins the executive power, to a large extent, it will teach democracy to negotiate. Because then the executive will realize that, of course, once you have majority in Parliament, it's always have your say and I'll have my way. It's more or less the way to go. But then if that doesn't happen, yes, like Dr. Alidu is saying, you need compromises, and that will come from negotiation. So you need to consult, you need to negotiate, and then of course you would know. So you always are able to reach some workable solution. Of course, to a very large extent, that is going to be very difficult for any executive. It's very difficult, particularly because we want to believe that political parties have ideologies, and most likely your ideologies may have been different. So it is not going to be very easy to always compromise, but you will be required to make compromises and to negotiate.
So to clarify, the learning I'm getting from this is that there is no codified requirement of an MP to represent his constituents.
No, you are a representative of your constituents in Parliament.
So
your constituency.
If, for example, your constituency, we want a new road in our constituency, but your party has decided to spend the money on a road in another constituency.
Yes.
You as MP, you cannot go against what your party has decided to do.
You can advocate to your party.
But
So
you cannot say that I am representing my people and so I am not going to go along with
you can.
party.
It is up to you. You can say that. So that is why everybody has an individual vote in Parliament.
But you are not legally required to do this.
No, you are not legally required to say that whatever your party brings to Parliament, you must support it. No, you have your vote. So you can vote yes or you can vote no. You can speak for the motion or you can speak against the motion. Now, how the dynamics work is up to you. But it is not as if the Constitution says that because you have gone to to Parliament on party ticket A, anytime party ticket A brings anything in Parliament, you must support it. There's no law that says that. So it is totally up to you. But the reason for your being in Parliament...
There's also no law that says that because you were voted into Parliament by people B, so whatever people B want, you must represent them.
The law presumes that you are representing people B. So you are the voice of the people B in Parliament. So supposedly, whatever you say in Parliament, that is what your constituents want, because you are your constituents' representative. That is why at the end of the 4 years, you now have to go back and account to your constituents, and then your constituents will judge you whether what you were saying and voting for is that what we want. So there's that accountability between you and your constituents when you come back for Parliament. But the presumption of the law is that once you are in Parliament from this constituency, you are representing your constituents. So whatever you say, it's presumed what your constituents want. That's the presumption.
All right. Well, we are going to come back to talk about this and other related issues in a moment. But right now, I think we can go to the president's residence, Nana Akufo-Addo's residence, where something is about to unfold. Mama V, what's the latest? To the president's...
Well, thanks, Kojo. We will touch base with our presidential correspondent, Elton Brobe, who's joining us right now to tell us what has happened the morning after. If you followed his report last night, he was at the residence of the president where there was a gathering. They were getting ready to give some sort of speech that never happened. So Elton is back with us. Elton, a very good morning to you, if you can hear me.
Yes, good morning, Mama V.
Okay, great. Are you still at the president's residence this morning?
Yes, exactly where I am now. It's a new day, and as usual, the work continues. So we are here to continue what we started last night. Last night, we were under the impression that the Electoral Commission was going to announce the verdict of the people, and then President Akufo-Addo will speak. So the stage had been set for that announcement and then the response from the president. And then later, we were told that the Electoral Commission first came out with a statement saying that they were not going to announce the results as earlier indicated in their flyer, which said they were going to do so at 5 p.m. And then in the early hours of today, they held a news conference, telling us why they couldn't announce the elections and saying that it may happen this morning. So yesterday, around 11 p.m. to midnight, it was clear that any comments from President Akufo-Addo was going to come after the announcement by the Electoral Commission. So the media, the supporters that have gathered in front and inside the house, everyone left, waiting for the Electoral Commission to finally announce the results of the...
All right, the connection seemed to have frozen. Elton Brobe, if you're still there, let's try and see if we can hear you now so you can end that statement. The very last thing you said, Elton, we lost you.
Yeah, so Mama, I was talking about the fact that the information we have is that the presidency of President Akufo-Addo is waiting to hear from the Electoral Commission the outcome of the presidential election, especially because we know that for the parliamentary, the results were declared at the various collation centers in the various constituencies. But for the presidential election, the chairperson of the Electoral Commission will have the opportunity to do so. So that is what will happen this morning. We are back at the residence. We've set up, and once the EC chairperson is done declaring the outcome of the election, the next step will be President Akufo-Addo to speak to the announcement that will come from the Electoral Commission. So basically, that is the reason why we are here.
But Elton, do we know exactly what time has been communicated to the presidency in terms of this announcement that we're all waiting for from the Electoral Commission?
We are told this morning, but as to what time this morning, it is very unclear. What I've picked is that the Electoral Commission is working on certifying more additional regional results that came in after they announced that they had done so with 11 out of the 16 regions. So what I've picked is that they have advanced in the collation and certification of the results. And so hopefully before midday, we are likely to have the final declaration. Now, the MPP, I'm told, have done their own collation. They have advised the president on the outcome of their own internal or independent collation that they did. So yesterday, for example, when everything was set and the presidency or the president was in readiness to speak to the nation, the vice president, speaker of parliament, leading members of the government had all gathered in the residence of President Akufo-Addo here at Nima. And it dragged, the reason being that the EC could not fulfill their own earlier communicated message that they were going to do so within a certain time. And now we are told that they have enough, results from the regions, and they are in a better position to communicate to the nation the outcome of the general elections. And then in whatever shape or form that will come, that will determine how President Akufo-Addo also speaks to the nation. So back in the residence, it is set and ready, awaiting the EC's chairperson's final message to the nation on the outcome of the elections.
Okay, great. But Elton, yesterday you also did report that there were some candidates who had called the president to congratulate him. Since we don't have the official results, on what basis did they call to congratulate him as winner of the election? Results hasn't been officially declared.
Right. So we got information from the residents that a call came in from Dan Latte of the GCPP and also Kofi Akpalu of the NDP. Also been to, I'm yet to verify another call from the NDP. All called in to concede defeat and also congratulated President Akufo-Addo on what they consider to be his re-election in the just ended general elections. So that is the information we picked from handlers of the president that these calls came in. And there were rumors that other presidential candidates that took part in the election had done the same. But what I can say on record is that of these two individuals, Kofi Akpalu of the LPG and then Henry Latte of the GCPP, they called in. And they did so according to the government handlers, that based on their own calculations and monitoring of the elections nationwide, they came to the conclusion that the election had won by, especially the presidential election, by President Akufo. That's how come they came through with their calls. So Mama, this is what happened.
Okay, just Elton, finally on this, the NDC yesterday did indicate that they had won 140 parliamentary seats. From the side of the presidency, what are you hearing in terms of the number of seats that the NPP captured in the parliamentary exercise?
Right. So the message again that came from the party headquarters. Remember that during the day, the MPP, we followed the MPP to their collation center at Ridge, where the General Secretary of the party, John Boadu, addressed the media from the party's internal collation center. And in that encounter, the head of IT for the MPP, who is also the chief executive of the National Communication Authority, Joe Anoche, also took us through how the party arrived at the figures that they put out, indicating their lead in the general election. At the time we were there, they had collated 90% of the 38,000 polling centers across the country, and they had projected a 51.7% win, representing some 6.6 million votes for President Akufo-Addo, and then 47% for John Dramani Mahama. And in the parliamentary election, John Boadu said that per their own calculation, they had won 137 seats. And they were actually in discussions with the two independent candidates for MENA and the other constituency to get them on their side. So they were quite convinced that they were in the majority. Now, I'm told that this is the same information that came through to the president. They are working with the 137 parliamentary seats they are claiming that they've won. They are also banking their hopes on the disputed elections in Sefiyu also, and also Pandai, which is a seat currently occupied by the Deputy Majority Chief Whip, Martin Yindam. So per these calculations, they say that when everything is done and dusted, they are likely to form a majority in parliament and hopefully win the presidential race as well. So this is the communication that came through to the president. And this is from their own independent collation of results that, according to them, were picked from all the pin sheets that were signed at the various polling centers.
Elton Brobe, we will leave it here. It is still morning. So as and when that declaration is done, we will come back to you for a reaction from the presidency. Elton Brobe is our presidential correspondent. He's been following the president's campaign and is embedded in the camp. He'll be bringing us a lot more. This is your election headquarters. Just to also remind you that the Electoral Commission had said to us that they had introduced more efficient measures which will facilitate the declaration of election results within 24 hours. In fact, they had given themselves 5 p.m. on Tuesday, the day after the elections, to declare the results. But late in the night, chairperson of the commission, Madam Jim Mensah, came out to apologize for the commission's inability to do the declaration, but said they were going to do it today, Wednesday. We're keeping our eyes on that. This is the presidential election declaration and the confirmation from the presidency that they've also been given Wednesday morning, which is this morning. Our coverage is brought to you in association with Petrosol. Clean fuel in full quantity is always a delightful experience. Cowbell Coffee, tasted, love it. McDan Shipping and Logistics Limited, your total logistics partner. Padiva Limited, your home of modern furniture. DDP Outdoor Limited, serving great brands. Festiva, adding flavors to your life. Wutria Lotteries, star 787 hash, Ghana's premier and biggest jackpot lottery, and HEPA Plus mixture for your general well-being. Back to Studio 997, where my colleague Kojiang Singh is sitting with law lecturer and legal practitioner Clara Berry Kasati, as well as political scientist Dr. Ali Dusaid. To practitioner.
We'll spend a little bit of time discussing that and how it's all unfolded. Right now, though, we were in the middle of talking about the possibility of a skirt and blouse nation. A skirt and blouse parliament and executive. And of course, until we go back to the next, until we go back for the next update from out there in the political world, let me remind you of what the numbers say right here on your election headquarters. So we have 258 confirmed constituencies here at the election headquarters. 258 out of 275. And for what we have in the presidential race, we place President Akufo-Addo ahead of former President Mahama. President Akufo-Addo has 51.32% of the 258 constituencies that we have gathered so far. That makes up some 6.2 million votes. We place former President Mahama at 47.28% of the 258 constituencies, and that is about 5.75 million votes. We're keeping an eye on this. As it evolves, we will keep you updated, but we have declared here on your election headquarters that there is a far more difficult path for former President Mahama to get 50% plus one votes than there is for President Akufo-Addo to do the same thing. Stay tuned for more. Let's get back to our analysis, because beyond the presidential election, which looks easier to predict for some than the parliamentary, In the end, what happens in this nation will be down to how the parliamentary election unfolds. So we'll talk about that in a moment. First of all, though, normally at 7 o'clock, the BBC News will be brought to you by the kindness of Fidelity Bank. Believe with us. And Fidelity Bank, of course, has done and continues to do so much. It's the reason why so many people trust and use them, because they will provide you with constant support to grow. They've got Kukua, the helpful WhatsApp banking assistant. Fidelity Online Banking is available. There's the Visa, the MasterCard, and the prepaid cards. The efficient Fidelity mobile app, and it'll equip you to take on the world and meet your daily and long-term goals. You can check your account balance. You can top up airtime, get mini statements, pay bills, transact money on the go, transfer money on the go, forgive me, and even open your account on the website at your own convenience. They've thought of everything. So you give it a try and make it happen with Fidelity Bank, because you and Fidelity together, you're more. Fidelity Bank, believe with us. So Vodafone fixed broadband is just too much. Get on the fixed broadband too much family Christmas promo and enjoy up to 200% bonus data, unlimited voice calls, and so much more. Now, I use Vodafone fixed broadband. It's fantastic. Just top up your monthly fiber broadband subscription with an extra 100 Ghana cedis. And you get up to 200% bonus data, as well as unlimited voice calls from your home phone and access to exciting Showmax content to connect, browse, and chill with your family throughout this Christmas period. The Too Much Family Christmas promotion gets even better with many smart home devices that you can buy, like security cameras, Android TV box, Google Home, sleek cordless home phones, and so much more. All at wonderful prices with tons of unlimited freebies. This Vodafone promo is just too much. Dial star 900 hash or go to fbb.vodafone.com.gh or any of their retail shops to subscribe. It runs from now until the 31st of December. Terms and conditions apply. Ready? So, do you want something to, spark your vim this morning? Something hot, perhaps? Something sweet and creamy? Well, all you need is 1 Ghana cedi and a cup of hot water as part of an awesome breakfast with only 1 Ghana. Try the new Nescafe Sweet and Creamy. Mild coffee that is sweet and creamy. So what are you waiting for? Go out there, get one for yourself, try it, and thank me later. Breakfast just got better with Nescafe Sweet and Creamy. It all starts with a Nescafe. This advert has been vetted and approved by the FDA. Nescafe, of course, is the sponsor of the nutrition line. Nestle offers good food for a good life. Normally, we'd bring you the sports center, but if you're having a George Adu Jr. withdrawal symptoms, don't you worry. Stay with your election headquarters. He and Gary Al Smith will bring you everything that's happening online with one of the most fascinating segments. It's called The Situation Room. And they'll bring that to you later in the day. Sports Center is brought to you on the Super Morning Show daily by MTN. Choose your own bundle, your own way with MTN Flexi Bundle. Just dial star 138 hash and enjoy bundles that don't expire. It's also brought to you by Standard Chartered Bank, here for good. And Nivea Men Deep range of products. It's time to go deep for real freshness with 48-hour protection from sweat and bacteria and 48-hour deep moisturization with the Nivea Men Deep range of products. Nivea Men, it starts with you. Official sponsors of Real Madrid. Okay, if you're yet to activate your MTN Momo account, you can do it right now from the comfort of your home. Just dial star 170 hash for MTN Momo. Select your 4-digit PIN number, re-enter the PIN to confirm it, and after that, you will receive a message which will confirm the activation. Now, if you don't get that message, just contact their digital channels or use the My MTN app for further assistance. If the message comes through, then you're good to go. You should also know that you can link your bank account to your Momo wallet to make life even easier. MTN Momo is your fast, secure, and most convenient way of transacting business today. Terms and conditions apply. Just Momo it everywhere you go. We there for you everywhere you go. So, with your Standard Chartered debit and credit card, every day is Black Friday. Show it, shop on, and smile away with amazing discounts as high as 50%. Yeah, that's right. Flash your Standard Chartered debit or credit card at UK brands, Orca Deco, Best Western, Premier Hotel, Urban Grill, Coco Lounge, Carbon, Vida E Cafe, Regal Hotel, AM and PM Restaurant, and Sports Bar, as well as Zena Lodge, Honeysuckle, and so many more. Don't have a Standard Chartered card? Don't you worry. Just download the SC mobile app or go to sc.com/gh to open an account and get yourself a free Visa Gold card. Go to any branch, and they can do this for you. Visit My Stand Chart Privileges on sc.com/gh to access the full list of discount partners. Remember, the 3 magic steps are show, spend, smile. Swipe for amazing discounts while earning reward points for every spend. Show your Standard Chartered card, spend with Standard Chartered card, and be guaranteed a smile with amazing discounts. Standard Chartered, here for good. Terms and conditions, of course, apply. Now, finally, Total Petroleum Ghana PLC received the prestigious Brand of the Year award at the Ghana Oil and Gas Awards, and they also won the Lubricant Product of the Year and Marketing Campaign of the Year. They dedicate these awards to you and, of course, to their service station staff whose hard work and dedication have earned them these awards. Thank you for making them number one. Keep choosing Total. Total, committed to better energy. All right, it's your election headquarters. The hashtag is ElectionHQ, and I want to see what you're saying on Twitter so that I can share it with the world. So make sure you use that hashtag. Start your tweet with it, and then tell us whatever is on your mind. Let's get interactive. Okay, we're also live on Facebook. So if you need to leave your home, get to your office, don't forget to take us with you. All right, the conversation at the moment is all around skirt and blouse. And this election has shown us more of it than ever before in the Fourth Republic. And we're starting to figure out what it will mean if indeed the NDC ends up with a majority in Parliament and the NPP ends up winning the presidential election. And before we took a break, we were settling on really what the responsibility of that MP is, when he walks into Parliament. Now that we're assuming, of course, that the majority of them, in this case, turn out to be NDC, with the NPP winning the presidential election. So now you are an MP. And as Clara has educated us, the expectation of the law is that you are there to represent your constituents first. But of course, we know the reality of politics puts a lot of pressure on a parliamentarian from his or her party. Now let's get to the practicality. So you are representing me, the citizen. Me, the citizen, I want free health care. The executive is bringing free health care. But you and your majority party are opposed to the executive. How can a citizen ensure he gets free health care in this scenario I've created?
Okay. It looks a little bit complex, but not really that complex. First of all, we need to understand the function of the legislature. In typical situation, the member of parliament is not supposed to bring those development. It's not his responsibility to prosecute those developmental projects. Even though he could lobby, he could influence, he could negotiate.
But let's keep it on the lawmaking level.
Okay.
That we know is their job.
Okay. So the lawmaking function is their job. In typically representative function of the MP, we look at it from 3 perspectives. The MP can represent the interests of the state. As in when we ratify international conventions, we deal with other countries, we negotiate, we pass bills and legislations. It's always important that the MP is supposed to look at the national interest first and act in a manner that saves the country a lot of money and not put the country in harm's way. So that's one level of representation. The second level of representation is the political party. Typically, political parties are vehicles through which citizens can go to parliament. But you can also go to parliament as an independent candidate, but not necessarily through a political party. But once you go to parliament as a representative or through the vehicle of a political party, it stands to reason that you need to actually consider the interests of that political party in the House of the Legislature. And sometimes political parties can be very, very, very stubborn when they want to achieve an agenda in parliament. So if you look at the whip system, I think there are 3 categories of whip. The 1 and then 2 and then the 3 whip system. Mm-hmm. Once they crack the 3-line whip, it means you must all follow. And there have been instances where political parties want to prosecute an agenda. And the day that the voting is going to be done, the entire national executive of the party come and sit in the chamber and look at you.
Yeah.
And that kind of thing do not only intimidate, but it kind of add up to the pressure for you to exercise your so-called independent judgment in a way that benefit the political party. And they can also be very vindictive in punishing, very quick in punishing when you refuse to toe the party line. But the last bit of representation is the constituency. And it is interesting that in Parliament, they don't officially refer to you as an NDC MP or an MPP MP. They say honorable member for, and they mention your constituency. So the constituency is the fulcrum. It is very, very important in the categories of representation. Even at the end of the day, they will vote you into Parliament and vote you out of Parliament. Your political party may deselect you. Your constituents can bring you back to Parliament, as it has happened
As we've seen
Phenomenal.
Your political party can support you, and your constituency will vote you out of Parliament.
As we've
So
seen
if you
several.
in several of
53
these things. So of
constituencies.
all the permutations, I tend to believe that the constituency is very important. If you have a situation where the executive belongs to one, is dominated by one party, and the executive by another party, we'll definitely learn how to negotiate, build consensus, and compromise. So it is the role of the MP to lobby. You know, you can lobby the sector minister, you can lobby the government of the day to be able to bring specific developmental projects to your constituency. What some people even do is that they go even outside government business, lobby NGOs, build sister nation relationship with other countries to be able to bring funding to be able to bear on some of the promises that they have made to the people. So there should be so much education on the function of the member of parliament. Traditionally, if you look at development at the local level, it is entirely the responsibility of the local government system. Maybe the districts, assemblies, and all those things that represent the government at that particular sub-state level. So MPs can lobby their DCs, MPs can lobby sector ministers, MP can lobby a lot of people to be able to get most of the things that they want their constituents, for their constituents done. But in cases where it becomes very difficult, maybe the good thing you have to do is to let them see how representative you are in fighting for their interests in parliament. And if they are generous at best, they can retain you. So of all the permutations, technically it becomes very difficult where if there's a split in political party that government, political party that lead, the best thing government will have to do is to maybe lobby behind the scenes. I'm bringing this bill. So if you're able to help me pass this bill, I will be able to do this for you at your constituency level. So maybe MPs can begin to cut deals, or government can begin to cut MPs in the list that can begin to cut deals with the government to be able to get some of the things that they want them to do at the constituency level done for them. But practically speaking, it's still going to be very difficult. Because if you set out to make me fail as a government because you control parliament, I'll also do a lot to undermine you at the constituency level and to make sure. So when it becomes that back and forth thing, it becomes very unpleasant.
The area in which this was probably going to be most visible is budgeting. That's what happened under Liman. It's happening in the United States as we speak. I mean, for the term of Donald Trump, Congress was headed by the Democrats, while he, of course, remained a Republican. So we saw examples of times when government was frozen because they were proposing to do something, and the Democrats were stopping it in Congress. Now, if we translate this to Ghana, the implications are quite serious. In fact, it's serious in the US. As we speak, there are people waiting for aid, and their aid has not been voted on because of this situation. The implications here are equally serious, if not more so, because we need money for everything. So if we find ourselves in a situation where, because of politics, because of just bloody-minded disagreement on ideology, practical things are not getting done, what's the way through it? I mean, what can citizens do to break that sort of, stalemate if it comes up?
I've always said that when it comes to what citizens can do in our democracy, citizens supposedly have all the power, but if you go and look at it, really they are a lot powerless in many instances. But when it comes to the dichotomy again, as we noted earlier on, there is no doubt in the law who the MP represents. The MP represents the constituency. So even though you would have contested and won a political party, you represent a certain constituency and you speak up to them. It is your responsibility to make sure that whatever you stand up for is reflective of the people of that constituency. Now, when it comes to politics getting in the way, like the truth really is, there's no way around it other than negotiating. So both sides would have to negotiate and all of that. And apart from that, then of course, each side would have to keep the people abreast as to who is doing you in at any particular point in time. It comes back to what democracy and accountability is, so that if at the end of the day, the people realize that it wasn't the executive that was the problem, but it was their representatives that was the problem. Of course, naturally, after 4 years, you are coming back to the people to account to them. It is their chance to hold you accountable for how you represented them at the end of the day. So, yes, it would be difficult because then, of course, it is not necessarily the case that the other side is always going to agree with you, but you must work at negotiating and compromising on those issues.
So if you look at the U.S. situation, it's even quite better than the Ghanaian situation, because the U.S. practices the presidential system, a federal system of government. And in federalism, you have two houses. You have the first house and the second house. So the first house, which is Congress, is represented dominantly on partisan lines. The second house is largely based on two representatives each from all the states. So the second house...
Even though they're also partisan.
Definitely, yeah. They are. The second house is supposed to exercise an oversight over the first house in terms of what? Legislative and other legislative-related responsibilities. So sometimes it may, like in the case of the U.S., we know the first house, the Congress was controlled by the Democrats, and then the second house or Senate was controlled by the Republicans. So yeah. There was even a kind of countervailing even power at the legislative level. But in Ghana, there's no doubt buffer. So you can say in the U.S., the second house served as a buffer between even the tension that occurred between the executive and the legislature. But in Ghana, there is not that kind of middle way buffer between the executive and the legislature. It's going to be kind of direct antagonism. And two, if you look at the United States system, they practice a presidential system of government. So there is a constitutionally approved separation of powers. So the executive, the judiciary, and the legislature are kind of a little bit independent. Though practically their day-to-day working business interact and interrelate. If you look at the Ghanaian system, we practice the hybrid or new presidential system. We do not have that complete separation of powers. You still see the executive, most members of the executive being part of the legislature, and then the vice versa. So it makes it practically difficult. And our constitution also saying that majority of your ministers might come from parliament. So assuming one particular party wins the presidency, another party controls majority in parliament, how do you then pick the majority of your ministers from parliament? Very good. Do you understand? That's
maybe these are some of the things that we will end up forcing ourselves to solve if we end up with a skirt and blouse government, because we now have to confront that constitutional provision. Because it's not going to be practical, really, is it?
It may be difficult, depending on the number of people you have, the number of MPs you have.
It may be difficult to satisfy
that constitutional obligation.
Especially since we have a president who has demonstrated an appetite for appointments. 125 ministers in the last in the current government that we are under. So yeah.
So it practically makes it a little bit complex. When we,
But they'll still have
well,
up to 100 MPs in Parliament, so...
yeah.
So they will be okay.
So, but we have more than 100 ministers of state.
We'll have more than 100 ministers
So
in
if we're
Parliament.
going to
so
continue with
would
that
be a
kind
problem.
of, like you said, appetite, then it's really
MPs
going to be
rather.
very difficult.
Word.
But maybe that can also practically force the hands of the appointing authority to be very generous. Maybe if that's the case, to look at the realities of the situation
And
then
have
be
a
able
more
to
inclusive
balance
government?
it in a way. You know? I don't know. I think we've
Long
we've-
term, we have to go revisit that provision. The idea of really taking, I mean, combining, because even some MPs sit on boards.
Yes.
It just doesn't do very well for the accountability aspect. You sit on boards whose budget and other issues are
You
coming to
scrutinize.
Parliament to be
For
scrutinized.
you yourself to scrutinize
Yes.
your own work.
So I think that particular provision, we need to go back and look at it. And I think it's also the way we can develop Parliament. If you are a parliamentarian, I think you already have a lot of work to do in Parliament. You should be able to concentrate on that work and do it very well. And then we are building the accountability aspect. If you are representing the people of your constituents, they should be able to hold you accountable. Right now, what is the mechanism in place for them to hold you accountable? If we come to the MP's office, for example, as a constituent, will I get your voting record? So that I know that, okay, this is what my MP has been doing. So that after 4 years, when you come back to Parliament, I can say that you voted on this. I didn't think this was what we wanted, and yet you supported this bill. You didn't support that bill and all. There is some accountability if we are able to structure if an MP is able to do their work very well as an MP. So we have to come back to look at how we even structure that. Elsewhere, you will have MPs having research assistants, a complete office. You will do a lot of research, and that's where the visiting comes in. Supposedly, you are supposed to be frequenting your constituency because you are supposed to know what your constituents want so that you can represent them better. Yet we are in a situation where very largely, I'm sure if we are looking for the voting record of a lot of our MPs, we are probably not going to find it.
Where is the record? They vote in this strange way. Where
Voice call.
Yes, by the volume of your voice, a law is passed. That's Ghana. So I wonder where that record will even be.
Exactly.
And I think in the
You
US,
said this in Parliament. This is what you were advocating. You argued for this. We don't think this was in our interest. At least we can see some amount of accountability. Then MPs will really have to think about their constituents and represent their constituents effectively in the jobs
Do you know
that
what
they do.
else I just realized? If we have a different sketch on
Hang
Glasgow,
parliaments kind
yes, impeachment becomes a very real possibility for any president.
so government,
Very real.
what's the name? Stability of government becomes very difficult.
Yeah.
So you have a
Impeachment.
tendency where the government is not. One of the good things about the what's the name? Presidential system is the relative. Presidential system is the relative stability of tenure of governments because practically it becomes very difficult to impeach than it is in a parliamentary system. So once you have a tendency of one party controlling the legislature, especially where I think in these kind of things it has to do with absolute majority, like 2/3. So which is usually it takes a very popular government to be able to get 2/3, or sorry, a very popular party to get 2/3. So assuming without admitting that we can get 2/3, or for the opposition in parliament, or just a few shortfall of 2/3, and they can lobby and convince the other side to join, then it becomes very easy to impeach a government. And when that happens, it means the stability of tenure of a government of the day becomes very difficult. And that can bring a lot of retrogression to already develop plans and projects that we have. So there are kind of possible practical challenges when we begin to experiment something
although
like this.
if somebody in the NPP now is worried about the possibility of impeachment becoming even more real, just think about it this way: if the NDC decides to impeach President Akufo-Addo, they are left with President Baumia. So I don't know if that would be something they would like to see. just putting that out there. Here's the other thing, though: should an executive wanting to get things done with a parliament controlled by the opposition, should that executive consider appointing ministers from the opposite party?
Well, it's difficult to say. At the end of the day, it really will depend on the strategy and how the president wants to work. We saw Kufuor do that with Indom. I think it wasn't only Indom that Kufuor appointed. I remember that
sports minister, the one that
who ended up in jail.
Yeah,
Malam Issa.
Exactly. So we saw that with Kufuor. So it wouldn't be completely novel in Ghana. Now, whether that worked out? I think for some of particularly the smaller political parties, I think to some extent some of them felt it affected them negatively, because then it weakened their party. Exactly, it weakened their independence and it weakened their parties. So yes, if for example, if let's say that and you have an NPP executive that decides that they want to appoint some members of the NDC as ministers in their government and all of that, whether or not they would even accept also, it remains to be seen. But it wouldn't be completely new in our body politic.
And there are two things. You see, one, it has to do with the issue of trust. You know, the issue of trust, but also the issue of dispensing political patronage. You know, when you win elections, a lot of people have contributed to your victory. So it stands to reason that dispensing political patronage will go to people who have contributed to your campaign first, before other people who haven't. That's the first thing to consider. So in actually looking at dispensing political patronage, there's the likelihood that political parties want to appoint ministers from their own party than from the other political party. But second, you're also looking at the issue of trust. The person that you are bringing, people in Ghana here, once you are not in my party, then you are my enemy. We have already drawn the battle lines clearly. So it will be like bringing an enemy into your house to sleep with.
Yes, you said it and we agree.
So it becomes very difficult. He can get up in the middle of the night and stab you, shoot you, burn down your house, do anything. But also the party you are appointing from, they also see the person who accepted as a hypocrite. We have seen recently what people did to Nasigri Mahama when he was appointed ambassador at large. People thought he had betrayed his party. So even your own party people say, oh, so we didn't know you were playing kind of political chess with the other party behind secret. But Kojo, this has worked in other democracies. If you go to Israel practices in practical terms what we call multi-party democracy, because it has always been very difficult for one political party to emerge as the winner, clear winner. And because it's presidential, the party, kind of parliamentary, political party with the majority of seats in parliament is allowed to form government. So practical terms, it has always been very difficult to have one political party emerging with majority of seats that is required to form government. So over the years, they have always had to build coalition. So they have always formed coalition government. So maybe Benjamin Netanyahu will lobby another political party and then they'll add maybe 5 or 16 votes to their party. Then they'll pick some sensitive ministerial positions from that party. Then they'll do it this way. But what we have realized is that the governments are not always stable. Yeah. Once the other political party believe that what you are going to do is against my ideology or my interest, they'll threaten you. If you do it, we are pulling out of the coalition. And if they do, you fall short of the seats that's required to govern. And it triggers another election. This year alone, I think they have voted like three times in succession, because every vote, no political party is able to get the highest number of seats. And in the process of negotiation, they are not able to convince the other political parties to join, because maybe what they are offering is not what they actually want. So it opens up the process for more consultation and negotiation. And if you are able to do it, it works perfectly well. The good thing about that thing is that you can no longer implement partisan interests. You have to do national interests, because the people that help you govern also have different parties and they have partisan interests as well. So if you are advocating for your party interest, we also bring our party and say, if you don't agree, then the government collapse. So Israel has been one of the countries that's able to do this very well. There are quite other countries. So I think it has to do with our character and attitude towards negotiation, towards compromise, and towards not seeing each other as enemies if you belong to different political parties. So it can work to some extent. But looking at the very bitter nature of our politics, it's just our problem.
Oh, but when it comes to, I don't think when it comes to those who really take those decisions, they don't see each other as enemies largely. They may see one another as political opponents, but I do not think that they largely see
They do
one
have
another.
close personal relationships.
Exactly. Some of them are
amongst each other.
family.
Yes, yeah. Well, the
Some-
Jinapo brothers
Exactly.
is a great example to always point to.
Exactly. Some
You
of them
know,
are family.
Yeah, at the personal level. But do you think when they go to parliament and party, they will agree?
It will become very
They won't
I
agree.
think
no
largely
doubt.
because when they are in parliament, like you have majority, so we are clearly, so we don't have anything to lose. But I mean, like you can have your say, we'll have our way. It's been the attitude. But when you realize that you need, let's take the referendum for example. When they realize that no party, they didn't have enough majority to be able to push through a referendum, we saw them walk. We saw them collaborate, and we saw them until the public sentiment went against. We did see the two political parties
together.
working
And
together.
they've done it
and all
on
of
many
that.
occasions. I
Yes.
think sometimes people point to the fact that these occasions are usually when they are voting over something that benefits them personally. But look,
Exactly.
there is no doubt that if we do end up with a skirt and blouse, a lot will have to change.
It won't be, yeah.
Parliament
Yeah.
itself, which has always been a law unto itself, will really have to look at how it operates. So when we come back, we need to take a break at this point. When we come back, there's so much more for us to discuss. We also need to find out what's happening out there. What's the very latest from the Electoral Commission, and all of that detail. There's only one place for it. It's right here on your election headquarters. Stay with us.